session is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide legal or professional advice and does not create any formal relationship between Hapco Philadelphia, the Sheriff's Department, and any of the speakers, participants, or organizations involved. The information provided during this session is for general knowledge and should not be considered a substitute for advice from a qualified professional. There is no guarantee that the information shared will be accurate or complete. Neither Hapco Philadelphia nor the Sheriff's Department and its representatives are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information provided. For specific advice or guidance, please consult the appropriate professional or expert in the field. Again, thank you so much to the Sheriff's Department for accepting this webinar. And with that, we can get started.
Good evening. You ready for me? Okay, now you on mute. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I'm Rochelle Bilal, Sheriff for the City and County of Philadelphia. I have with me tonight my Director of Community Outreach, Leroy Fisher, my Chief of Court Operations, who used to be over the Civil Department, Sean Thornton, my Inspector, David Fallon, who is now over the Civil Department. And we welcome an invite to basically have a conversation on certain things, especially since we are the new found organization that is handling evictions and ejectments. So let me tell you this. And I guess in August, we got the word that it was all falling in our hands. And that's because of our deputies' training that they get, civil training and de-escalation training and other training, just to make sure that people all kept safe. So throwing it in our hands, we had to come and develop certain things. And if you know, everybody around the world is manpower is short, and that does not negate the sheriff's office. Okay, you can look. The other thing, since we have it in our hands, and you're going to ask certain questions, we don't have a problem with responding. Since we do it in our hands, I had to come up with a way to be able to handle things efficiently and professionally. So I'm developing what you can call the Eviction Integrity Unit. We have a budget from the city, and as the city budget me to hire more people will be added into the Eviction Integrity Unit. We handle about 5, maybe a week, and now it's up to more than 5 a week. And I think we have about 20 or 30 a week to do. Plus, we do a lot of our civil work that we have to post, garnishments on bank loans and all our other civil jobs that we have to do. We just don't do evictions or ejectment. We have our civil unit has a whole host of responsibilities. But we're edging towards what our goal is. And one is hiring more people in our Eviction Integrity Unit and putting more sworn personnel out on the streets. Prior to that, our deputies basically put paperwork together for about 4 hours, and then they would go on the streets. But now I've hired civilians to be the input in our Sheriff Department civil unit, and our deputies are more out on the streets, other than 4 hours in and 4 hours out. They're basically out on the streets altogether. We also upgraded our technology. That means in their vehicles, the ones that are coming in, and on them personally, they have iPads, which they can get information in real time from our office, and they can put information in the iPad and send it back to the civilians to upload into the system. And so that's what our integrity unit has been developed into. As we hire more people, we'll get more people out on the streets. If you don't notice, our deputy sheriff's training takes about 19 weeks to become a sworn officer. And so let's make clear, they don't just do 19 weeks here. They have to do 19 weeks up at State College, Penn State. And so that means they leave this city for 5 days a week and come home on the weekend. And that's a lot. And then the process of hiring deputy sheriffs is is a strenuous process. Sworn people just don't come and apply. They have to go through a background check, interviews, and they have to go through psychological evaluation and a whole host of training. So it is not easy to just hire, but we're trying to make it easy because we've been fighting to have our training here in the city, so that therefore it'll be a lot easier for those who want to be deputy sheriffs, which we so badly need. They train and can be here and they can go home in the evening. So said that, you have Sean Thornton on the line, and you have my Director of Community Outreach and the Inspector of our Civil Unit are free here to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you for inviting us. We look forward to basically trying to educate people on what it is that we do. And at the end, who you can contact when you have a situation that you think we need to be abreast of. I yield the floor.
I think they are muted. You said Sean Thornton?
Yes, Chief Inspector
Okay.
Sean Thornton. I'm
There we
here.
go.
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
So are we going to be able to upload things onto like a portal to like get in contact with you guys? Or so first of all, we followed a handful of ejectments. You guys do great work. Very, very thankful to have you guys in our corner. But yeah, so like as far as like the community outreach, is there going to be like a portal you can upload things to and stuff like that, or how does that work?
Well, what we brought into the sheriff office was a new, totally technological system that basically is beginning to upload a lot of things pertaining to the sheriff office and lawyers. So some instances you will be, but as we move on with this system, we're adding different things. So you're going to get to that point to be able to just add it into the portal and we receive it, and then we can move on from there. I know it's taxing to have to come all the way in Center City. I don't like being down there, and I know it's a lot to come there because parking is terrible. So we're working towards that. Our Tyler Tech is our new IT system, which connects all our, let's say, all our units to be able to be input, and everything can be calculated through there. We developed that system just for the sheriff office, so eventually you will be able to do so. Right now, we're getting the city and everybody else on board with that system.
I'd like to ask a question. Joe Thomas, Hapco board member. Sheriff, what is the actual process to do an ejectment here in the city of Philadelphia from A to Z?
I'll leave that to Thornton or Fallon. Thornton.
I got it. This is Chief Inspector Sean Thornton. How you doing, sir?
How are you, sir?
That is a good question. A lot of people really don't know the exact process. First thing you have to do, let's just say there's an individual in your property, right? I'm guessing you want the person out your property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, first thing you have to do, you have to file a complaint. It's called a complaint and ejectment. You're basically saying to the court that you have an individual in your property that you want out the property for whatever reason that you may have. There's a lot of different reasons. And I don't want to talk about that part of it. That's between you and that individual in the property. But it's called a complaint and ejectment. You take that to the court, and the court will basically based on what you articulate to the court, they will get you that complaint and ejectment. You bring that complaint to our office, and we'll serve it in, let's say, a 30-day period. It has a lifeline of a 30-day period. We take those documents and give it to the occupant and say, hey, look, this individual has a complaint against you for whatever reason. Okay. So now that individual in the property, by law, has a right to respond to your complaint, which I believe they have to do in 20 days. Don't quote me on that, on the law on that, but they have an opportunity to respond to your complaint. So let's just say they ignore the complaint, and you basically win that situation as far as that complaint. Now the individual don't leave the property. Now you get the opportunity to go file what's called a writ of possession. And with that writ of possession, we'll take that document and we'll serve them and let them know that now you have to leave the property. Now we have to understand there's like two different types of writ. There's a MC writ from the municipal court, and there's a CP writ. All depends on the situation, what court you file that. Now, I'm assuming, are you a landlord? Yes, or
Oh
this
no,
is
yeah, I'm a landlord.
okay.
I'm asking it from a standpoint of so that we all know what the process is.
Okay. You just go
Okay,
through the process, Thornton.
just in general. Okay, let's make a
Yeah,
general
I'm not asking for
process.
myself.
Okay, so this is just again, we'll get those documents and we'll begin that process. We'll serve them the documents. We'll give them notice. We'll let them know that hey, you have an eviction pending. There will be dates and things of that nature with it, and we'll actually give them a date later on in that process if they don't actually leave. Technically, they're supposed to leave, but 9 times out of 10 they don't. Then we'll actually set up a date, a hard date when we'll actually come out to the property, and they'll be evicted from the property. So that's in a nutshell the general basis of how we actually execute the evictions.
Is there a difference? And I don't mean to step over anybody. Is there a
No.
difference between an ejectment versus no trespassing? In other words, I have a property that
Okay.
I know it's going to be vacant for maybe 3 weeks to a month. So put no trespassing signs on the front and back, take pictures of it. Is it easier to do an ejectment through that process versus not having no trespassing signs?
Well, speaking generally speaking, let's just say if you have like no trespassing signs on your door, whatever the case, and someone go into your property, that's actually a criminal issue there. That's not a civil matter where you have to like you eject them from the property. You can dial to call the police department and say, look, these individuals is on your property and you want them off your property for whatever reason. And at that point, they should be able to remove them individuals from your property.
Well, I remember some time ago when David O was the council person, he came up with a process wherein if you posted no trespassing signs front and back, took pictures of it, it was easier to get a person out than it was if the person just broke into your house and you had to go through that process of ejectment. I was just wondering if it was easier to go through that criminal process would be easier or the regular ejectment, which costs an arm and 2 legs.
Yeah, I would think that it would be easier going through the criminal process versus the civil process. I'm not sure the criminal side. I have to be honest. I'm not sure the criminal side of it and how things is done that way. I can speak on the civil side of how we do things.
All right. Thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
I have a question. I have a friend who is out of state and inherited a property in Philly. And it's got a squatter in there. So I wanted to buy the house and then I would handle the ejectment since I'm in Philly. And I talked to a title company today who literally told me that they will not handle the sale of a house with a squatter because, quote, squatters have so many rights now, is what she said. So the process that you described is a 6-step process. And I know you don't make the laws, but what can you do?
Well, based on what you're saying, these individuals don't have legal right to the property. And you can articulate to the court basically step by step of what's going on to the property. They would have to come to court to explain what gives them rights to that property. Now, there may be some litigation between the two parties, yes, but at the end of the day, I believe that if they don't have legal rights to the property, then they have to leave the property. If you can actually articulate and prove that they don't have legal rights to the property, it shouldn't be a problem. If they establish themselves in for a period of time, in my opinion, it may be a lot difficult. But at the end of the day, they don't have legal rights to that property. And you would just have to show proof of that and then get them out the property. And then you can do whatever it is that you need to do with the property.
Are you aware that title companies won't even let you sell a property that has a squatter in it?
That part I do not know. I don't work with them. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sheriff.
Yeah, let me say this. No, we do not. And I wouldn't even know why a title company would not sell a property because they're just selling a building. They're not selling the person that's in it. People buy properties with other people in it, and then they go through the process of having them, removed from the property. either do eviction or ejectment. So I don't know why that happened. So that's a conversation you might need to have with them. And that might be a conversation you need to have with them in the courts. Because I can understand why. They're just selling a building, not the person inside the
But
building.
they also, the title company has to provide title. And so it becomes an insurance issue. It becomes a legal issue.
So it becomes an
title
insurance
company.
issue. And that's why I'm saying it becomes a legal issue that you may have to deal with the title company on a legal issue phase. The insurance is for the building. If there's a squatter, would be the same thing if there was a tenant in there. They wouldn't sell the property with a tenant inside. I've never heard
You got
of
to
that.
change title companies, brother.
Yeah, there's plenty of title companies around, so just go to a different one.
Yeah.
That's
information.
kind of an easy way to look at it. But the fact of the matter is that the squatting situation is way out of control. We all know that.
And just also, depending on how you articulate it, we've actually had emergency evictions where the individual go into court and explain the situation, and they want these individuals out the property immediately. And it's actually a court order to remove the individuals out the property. So they can be done. It all depends on how you articulate it to the court and explain the situation. Just so you know that.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I think Brian, you wanted to go next?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I apologize, Miss Bilal. This wasn't the greatest of plans for us, so we're going to try to facilitate this a little better moving forward. And I'm just going to kind of take over a bit, if you don't mind. My name is Brian. I'm on the Hapco board, and there's a number of questions that we want to ask, but I want to try to ask one person in particular who is very familiar with ejectments to kind of help me facilitate the questions around ejectments, and then we'll kind of move on to evictions, if you don't mind. Does that work for you?
That works for us.
Sure.
Great.
Until 7:30.
Yeah, that's fine. Ryan, if you don't mind, I know I'm putting you on the spot a bit, but I think you can kind of help me and jump in with me with this. So as everyone knows, ejectments is for squatters, and what we want to attempt to do, because the sheriff office controls ejectments and how that process works on the removal side of things, we want to facilitate the questions around that, and we want to kind of move this along. I apologize, Billy, that we had to cut you off a bit, but we need to move forward and make the questions more generalized for everybody here. With that said, what is the current status of, since the workload kind of combined with losing the LTO, what is the workload looking in terms of for the ejectments and also evictions? And then we'll kind of try to focus on ejectments, if you don't mind asking. So I'm guessing I'm asking, where are you at with being able to handle the current workload? Is there a backlog? Those types of questions is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I kind of got some. There was a question that said in the newspapers that we are having problems with doing our job. Don't believe everything you read in the newspapers, because if you did, you'd be probably under a rock by this time. So, Thornton, are you on here, or is
Yes.
Fallon on here?
Yeah, I got it.
Go
Right
ahead.
now, we're currently we're actually doing 20 evictions a day with the increase of work with the landlord tenant issues what they're having. Speaking with them in the past, they were doing about 30 a day. So we are right around that time, right around the amount that they were doing versus what we're doing. But as the sheriff indicated at the top, that we also have other functions other than just doing ejectments and things of that nature. So if we're doing around 20 a day, and again, this was just dropped on us in August, this increased workload, along with all the other things that we're doing, like we just had the election detail. We have an injunction going on with strike details and things of that nature, preparing for possibly SEPTA going on strike. So these things and postings and things of that nature. So now you're talking about adding the landlord tenant writs in the mix of everything else that we're doing. We've managed to be able to do about 20 a day, where the landlord tenant office was actually doing about 30. So we're not too far off from what they were doing. So again, as the sheriff indicated, whatever was written in the news, we're not struggling at all with it. I think we're doing pretty good. with what we actually had to deal with the increased workload.
Thornton, I saw somebody in the chat that said they used to can evict people within 3 months. Well,
Ooh,
with all the protection and all the things that they try to have you go back to court for, let me tell you, I was a landlord. I got out of the landlord business because it's too much. But with all the protections and back and forth, and then the mediation that comes in to certain things, is probably why it may go a little longer.
mm-hmm.
And then it comes into the wintertime where, judges and everybody else decides to do other things. But 3 months, Thornton, aren't we still around that?
It's about 3.
It's
Let me see here.
it's
I would
higher.
say around that. That's a good time frame about that period of time. Yes.
Well, I filed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I filed in May, and I'm just going to court tomorrow.
Yeah,
What
the
you mean?
process takes a lot longer than 3 months.
Right.
What you mean by going to court?
My question is, what should I expect tomorrow? I mean, it should be cut and dry. They haven't paid in basically 8 months.
Well, we can't project what the courts may decide because we're not the judges that sit on that bench.
Well, I understand that.
We only get when the courts make a decision is when you bring it to us.
The date you bring it to us is somewhere between 5 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
It's the date that you actually bring the documents to us. Now, you may get the judgment, but sometimes I don't know if you go through an attorney. You may give it to your attorney. I can't speak on that, and I don't want to throw your attorney under the bus.
Right. Well, no, I'm using the Hapco service.
Okay, so I don't know that process. I just know when we actually get it in our hands, it's 5 to 6 weeks or so, 2 to 3 months in that period when we actually get the documents. We timestamp it too, by the way, just so you know that.
Okay. So once basically I get the writ of possession, which is where you would take over.
I'm sorry, it was echoing. I couldn't hear that.
I'm just going to kind of step in. Lauren, can you mute Kevin, please? Just so everyone knows, this is the sheriff's office. They handle the back end of the evictions, not the first 2 steps. So let's make that clear. What I'm going to do is, I'm sorry.
Can I ask just like two quick ones? Yeah. So first question is, after the ejectment, after the lockout, how long do you have to hold a tenant's possession? Is it 31 days and you can leave it in the property?
It's about 30 days, yes. 1 month. We actually advise both parties, let them know that leave the goods in the property, set up a time frame within that 30-day period, and to get the goods out.
It makes sense to like document everything and
absolutely.
To take a million pictures and make sure that all, and then 31 days after that, you can do whatever you want with the belongings, or what does that look like?
Well, we actually advise the occupants, say, listen, you have a 30-day period to make contact with the new owners or the landlord, whoever that individual is, the plaintiff, and to get your goods back. After that 30-day period is up, pretty much you can do what you want to do with it.
Understood. And then the follow-up to that is squatters that break back in.
Yes.
What is the recourse there?
That's actually now a criminal matter. It's trespassing. It's breaking and entering. It's
So, but Philly PD, very, very busy.
Yes, but I will say this: you call them. We actually give the plaintiff, whoever filed, document to say that we actually gave them the documents, that we gave possession to the property, and we'll let them know that if you have any questions, just always call our office and we can verify that we did transfer the property over to the plaintiff and whoever's in that property. If it's the defendants or the occupants, we let them know that they did break back in, and they typically would take action.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, and I actually spoke to Philly PD numerous times over the years, so I haven't had any issues with that.
We've had it once or twice. Again, everyone's very busy. Understood. Totally get it. And then I want to double back just to like the question on timelines, right? So like understood evictions are taking a little bit longer, but what does that mean ejectment wise, right? So like the court process takes 6 months, right? And then engage the sheriff's office. Are you guys a little slower right now, or no?
Far as I know, it's still within that 5 to 6 week range. Typically with all our evictions, 5 to 6 weeks, no more than 90-day period. It's like no more than a 90-day period, but 5 to 6 weeks.
Yep.
We actually increased it. I'm sorry,
In our civil procedure, it gives us the time frame of when we have to do what we need to do. So
Understood.
once we get it, and the court says they got to be out within a certain period of time, they got it on their door. You got to be out with a certain period of time, unless there's agreement made between the tenant or whoever's in the apartment and the owner of the property as to what goes on. But just let me caution you on this. See, once you make an agreement with a tenant after you get a writ of possession, that writ of possession becomes null and void. You don't get, this is where the problem comes in at. You don't get that when after they make an agreement and then 6 months later they late, then you want to show up at their door and say they got to be out of there.
Right.
You don't get to do that.
Right.
So that's hostile. That brings hostility into stuff, and this way frictions come in.
Yeah. I'm talking specifically when the sheriff comes to do the lockout. We have the writ of possession. We're ready to go, and it's always normally it's very nice and polite, right? Totally understand.
Absolutely, yes.
So did you answer the question about if they break back in? I know you said that.
That's a criminal matter.
It becomes a criminal matter. Defiant, trespass, breaking and entering,
burglary, whatever the police department wants to charge them, that's a criminal matter.
Yes.
So what are you suggesting the landlord do?
That they have to call the police.
Just call the police. And again,
so I guess that was the question. What he's saying is when we call the police, which I'm assuming, I know this is the sheriff's department, I get it. But when we call the police, sometimes the cooperation is not there. So what do you suggest we do?
How would the cooperation?
Sometimes they'll step away.
Just to interrupt, like it's happened to me multiple times, right? We filed multiple ejectments, and I would say this year alone, 2 times it's happened. Called Philly PD, they show up, and nothing is done, right? So like now we have a squatter situation, we have writ of possession, we have a full ejectment, and we have a squatter that's back in the house that we don't have any real recourse to get them out.
You know what? Instead of just calling the police, I would call their supervisor. You need to get supervisor on the scene, because they cannot leave a person when you have the full papers that they have been ejected out of the property, and they have documents. You have the documents to show it, and they want to step away. That's a criminal matter. That's their responsibility. You got to call the police, and if that person doesn't answer, call the next person of rank there, and if that person doesn't get it, call the third person of rank.
So I've called the sheriff's office, I've called Philly PD, I've called a lot of people, and no one seems to care.
Just so we're clear, do you understand how difficult that would be if I call the police? How am I going to get to the supervisor that fast while the squatter is there and the cops actually want to go somewhere else? So I'm trying to understand the realistic.
Because
realistically,
they got to show me his dashboard. There was a shooting down the street. Like I'm in Hunting Park, right? Like it's. I understand they're very busy, right? Like they don't care that someone broke back into a house.
You know what? If I had enough deputies, and because we deal mostly with the courts, and if I had vehicles on the street, I might could say to you, maybe you could call us, we could send somebody, but we don't have that. The city patrols the streets. They deal with the criminal matters. We deal with the civil matters.
Okay.
So I have another question. Sorry, last one, and then I will completely shut up. I'm very sorry.
Sure. Brian, I appreciate that.
We had a situation where we had a squatter, inherited the squatter, and they were very smart. They got the address changed on their license so that they lived there, right? That took almost 18 months. Any recommendations for something like that? Because it seems like that could be something, that could happen moving forward. Is there a faster way around? That's a year and a half,
That's a long time. And I feel your pain, because trust me, it happened to me. That's why I'm out of business. Because it's too much. When you people are getting smarter and craftier in trying to take over people's properties, They give their address changed to on a driver's license or just the ID card. They do. And then you have to go through an eviction, and you got to go to court, and you got to prove that this person never really had possession of the property, not through you, not through no lease, not through anything.
No
If they
deeds.
took on your property. They don't
So
have
what kind of proof could you provide for that?
What kind of what?
What kind of proof could you provide to say that they don't legally have rights to the property if they have a lease? Because some of these people are getting real crafty. They got fake leases and, they're showing pay stubs or, deposit slips to say that they gave money that they probably never gave, or maybe they paid it to Joe Smith who took their money and ran off. So like what could we do in that case? Like what kind of proof will we need?
Let's say I'm a 27-year veteran in the Philadelphia Police Department. When I left, I did investigations. And this is not advice. Just make it clear.
Okay,
So that y'all won't say the sheriff said. This is not advice. You have to basically document your own property, literally. Document it to the point that you document it with the police department, with the courts, that your property is vacant.
Mm-hmm.
There's no lease to anybody to be able to be living in your property. With an affidavit, with the courts, document it. So if somebody come into your property and they say, well, now they done changed their address, but I documented to you 3 months ago that my property is vacant. There's no lease. There's nobody assigned to that. You got to be able to fight them with the courts, more so by documentation. The other thing I suggest that you put cameras on your properties.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion, because cameras time, date, and stamp any movement in your properties, back and front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely good advice. Thank you.
Do you
And
have
then as far as documenting your property, like how would you document that it's vacant? Like how would we go about doing that?
Affidavits filed with the court. You can file it
Okay.
in reference to your property.
Okay, got it.
My property is vacant. I am fixing it up. I'm preparing to sell it. I'm just leaving it vacant. I'm out of the country for 6 months. My property is vacant. Document it as part of your information on your property. I think the city has now, this is dealing with those that's trying to steal people's property with deeds. They have that program going on. I'm not familiar with that. Are you familiar with it, Thornton?
No, I'm not.
They have a deed property that you file for anybody to can try to come into record a deed, that they can't just automatically go in there and do that nowadays. So I would just document it with an affidavit where a notary signed it that your property is vacant, and just file it with the court. You want to file it with the courts in reference to your property at this location.
Let me add to that too. That's something that the Department of Records has a procedure for.
Yes.
And it ultimately involves the police department. We had something like that happen a couple of months ago, but the owner couldn't fully document their ownership. You have to get all of the procedures from the record of deeds, and also it tells you what you need to give to the police department so that they can come out and remove a person.
I want to say one thing, and then I promise I'll shut up. But everyone on this call, Sean, Rochelle, Edward,
Yes.
they're here to help us, right? Like they're not the courts, they're not the judge. They're gonna hopefully show up and help you get people out of your property, right? So I don't know if you guys know the law. Obviously, if you work at Philly PD, 100%. But I don't know. I think you're here to help. And any tips or suggestions on what we can do to do this a little bit better would be super helpful.
Basically, that's look, as a person that went through that, trust me, I feel your pain. I do. And it's not funny, but I feel your pain. And so that got me out of the business. But those that want to be in this business, in reference to be landlords, there need to be a lot of things that need to be changing. And I think that the suggestions go with those legislators that change the laws.
I have another question that someone sent me. It's Why is the sheriff's process for evictions different in common pleas court versus the municipal court?
I believe it's timeline. You have in the municipal court, you have the writ of possession, 11 days, vacate the property. They don't vacate the property. They got to file an alias writ of possession, which is a second writ. It's the same writ, but it's called an alias writ. And then that document is what we actually evict off of. Where common pleas is just your standard writ and it has a lifeline of 90 days, and we have to evict in that 90-day period. So it's just the different courts with different laws, basically.
The next question is why is the sheriff's process for evicting a squatter different from evicting a tenant?
Why is the sheriff process different? Or
Yeah,
why
I
is the
don't.
laws different?
Well,
I think it kind of
again,
goes to the same thing.
we're just trying to understand the perception of how you guys interpret it as well. Obviously, we know it's different, but the questions are trying to help us determine what our approach should be as we continue to be landlords. So, you know, it's some of these are perception and
Yes.
personal, you know, so
Well,
that's why we're asking.
So basically, what's the difference between a squatter injection and a tenant injection?
Correct.
Thornton.
Well, basically, let's just say you have a squatter. You would have to typically, most times, you have to go through common pleas court. And where you have a tenant, you will go through the municipal court. And again, as I stated before, there's different rules and laws from the two different courts. So that's why the process is a little different. Not too much different. We pretty much still going to give you notice. We're still going to give you another date to vacate the property. We're still going to either you have goods in the property, you have 30 days to get your goods out the property, whether you're a squatter or a tenant. So that framework within our office is still the same, but the municipal court versus the common pleas is just the laws is just a little different from that standpoint. We still handle you the same. We still make contact the same.
Okay. Another question, and again, I'm just going down some of the questions just to try to avoid people kind of interrupting people, you know, in a rude way. I kind of know the answer to this question, so I'm just going to give it. If we have a judgment from Philadelphia Municipal Court, can the sheriff office do something to get the tenant to pay? I mean, I think the answer is pretty obvious. It's not your job.
If
So
you have a judgment,
correct.
okay.
Yeah.
I think our civil procedures, Thornton, tell them what we do. That's it. That's another part of our jobs.
As far as, wait a minute, like the judgment amount?
If they got a judgment on a person that owes them money,
Correct.
the procedures civilly, what it is that we do.
We actually can do it like a levy your goods and the property. But I believe this is tied into the landlord not paying their rent. I mean, the tenant not paying their rent. Now we can't go and collect that, but there's other avenues that they can do to collect that money. If we can do a levy to recoup those funds, they can do bank attachments and things of that nature to get their money. There's a host of things that they can do.
So when you say levy, explain the levy, what that means clearly.
All right, levy is a writ execution. Under the umbrella of writ execution, there's a number of things that you can do. Again, as I indicated, there's called a bank attachment. You can attach the defendant or the occupant or the tenant bank account to recoup your money to try to settle it that way. We can do a levy under the writ of execution umbrella where we can sell their goods and a property to make up the difference from the lost money that they had, that they lost from not paying. So there's a judgment, and then also there's the eviction part. But as far as the judgment, there's avenues. That's the avenue we can take to recoup the funds, the money that's owed to the individual.
Who would handle that?
Isn't there a judgment that you can put on their name so when they go to file those income tax?
They actually, I think, is that like a lien or something, or similar to a lien?
Yeah.
Just to clarify,
sorry, go ahead.
Just to clarify, in order to attach the bank accounts, do the landlord have to have the bank information of the tenant?
Now that's actually a good question. Now let's just say that individual was paying from a bank account. you pretty much know where they bank if that's the way they paid. But a lot of times, plaintiffs or plaintiffs' attorneys, they would like fish around and just hit all the major banks in the city: Wells Fargo, TD Bank, Police and Fire, some other, hot, well-known banks in the city, and just see if that individual have a bank account there. And if they do, the bank is obligated by law to respond to the legal documents, whether they say that, hey, look, this person does have a bank account, or they can say that this person does not have a bank account at this particular institution.
So all you need to do is know where they bank. You don't need to have a social security number or anything else.
You have the name, first and last name, maybe the last known address. That's a legal thing. We get a ton of them. The plaintiff or plaintiff's attorney do the homework and figure these things out, and we just give the documents to the bank, and it just goes from there.
And so you can do that after you have a judgment against them.
The money,
correct?
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Do we have to go to a lawyer, or does the sheriff's office help with that? Because we have a judgment that's just sitting there rotting because the tenants didn't pay their rent and they're not going to pay their judgment. So who help with that?
We don't actually do the paperwork. You have to do that on your own. You can go to City Hall, courtroom 296. They can walk you through that process. If you know you have a money judgment, they can walk you through that process and tell you exactly what you need to do, documents that you need.
I had a scenario.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
My wife and I are purchasing a property from her aunt. She's elderly. She lives with her son, and she's kind of in a distressful situation. So she said we're in the process with the title company to purchase the home. She's the sole owner.
Mm-hmm.
We know the son is not going to leave. We foresee this already. He has no rights far as on paper. Is he going to be considered a squatter or a tenant? And how would we have to go about that situation?
It's possible to go through orphans court. I don't know if you can go through orphans court. Orphans court typically is between family members.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually, I believe, again, I'm not an attorney, but in my experience in dealing with these things and talking to people, you say is your aunt, is an aunt involved or something? Your aunt, ma'am? Okay. You can help. You say your aunt is elderly, I believe. Is she able to speak on her own behalf and fill out documents and things of that nature?
Yes.
Okay. She has this individual in the property. She can get this person out the property. I don't know if it's through orphans court. I'm not sure, but I think it's the way you can get that done rather quickly. But again, that starts at courtroom 296, and they can walk you through that process. Okay. And I would do that. I would try to get them out first before you even do that. That's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, it's going to be lengthy time frame.
No, because he's not considered a squatter if he lives in the property.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So he has status in a sense.
He does because he's a relative. That's why I believe orphans court can help with that. Typically, again, orphans court is dealing with family members. Let's just say if an individual was deceased, and now you have the heir of the property, and you have that person, the son, whoever is in the property, they typically go through orphans court to get that individual out the property because they have no legal rights to the property, no longer have legal rights to the property.
Now, one of the situations, she's fearful of him, so she wanted to just leave the property and then, I guess, let us deal with it after sold. But you're suggesting that we try to do that prior to?
Well, either whatever makes it convenient for you guys. Again, if there's a safety issue, we don't want to see something happen while you're starting like court proceedings with the two individuals in the property. Now you're just asking for more issues. You know what I mean? So if you can remove the aunt from the property, transfer everything over, if you have a title company that will actually do it, right? And then you just start the court proceedings to get that individual out the property.
You have some questions in the chat.
We gotta keep the questions going. Someone else asked specifically about the idea of how the process in Philly compares to other states and cities? It's kind of a general question, but do you have any idea on if our process locally is comparable, taking longer, shorter, to other large cities?
We don't know.
That's a good question. I do not know.
Okay.
I do not know.
But thank you for that information because we probably need to vet that out.
Yes, I agree.
Another question was, I don't quite understand this one. I'm sorry. Let's go to a different person. Who is next?
I think Victor had a question.
Victor, if you can unmute, you can go ahead.
This is going back a bit, but I believe in Pennsylvania, as far as garnishing wages, if the tenant makes below a certain amount, you can't garnish their wages anyway.
Okay, see, I'm not familiar with that law. I just know that's the avenue that individuals can take to try to satisfy the judgment. I'm not sure if that part you're talking about as far as low income. I'm not familiar with that.
Well, for moderate to low income, yeah.
If it's under the federal poverty guidelines, you can't collect.
You can't collect.
Okay.
Which the majority of our tenants probably hit that mark.
Yeah, this is keep in mind, this is Philadelphia's, I think the poorest large city in the country. So yeah. keep that in mind.
I recently went through an eviction, and the judge ordered her to pay me and had a lockout date no sooner than October 7th. And I paid the sheriff's department. I waited the 10 days, paid the sheriff, waited the 10 more days, paid the sheriff. And then by the time I got my lockout date, or by eviction date, it was the 31st of October. So she finally paid somewhere in there after the initial lockout date, but before the sheriff came and evicted her. So first of all, is there something you can do to speed up the process? And second of all, do I get my $400 back?
Get your $400 from what? Because she decided to pay?
Yeah, because the lockout date was October 7th and you all couldn't come until October 31st, but you're going to keep my money?
So we started the process. That's all part. So you have to understand enforcement. Enforcement is us actually leaving documents on the door, things of that nature, mailing things to the property. We actually start in that process. So even though we didn't physically go out and remove them from the process, our presence showed force. And for them to say, hey, look, you have to be evicted from the process, from that property. I'm sorry.
For further clarification, that again, this is the sheriff's department. They do two steps for us: the writ of possession and the alias writ. The writ of possession is what he's saying is basically putting a physical notice on the premises of the property. The alias writ is when they physically ensure that the individuals that were living there as the tenants are no longer living there. So because he starts, I think 70 or 80% of people leave after the first step. So that's what he's referring to.
Or they come in and they pay the money. It's like your tax lien sales. So if you back in your taxes and they send you out a notice saying they back in your taxes, going to put it in sheriff's sale, most people run in and pay their taxes. So it's the process that begins.
It's 7:23. I'm going to ask some general questions to the sheriff to ensure that we can keep a open line of communication. Hopefully we were peaceful in asking the questions. Hopefully this Zoom was respectful as far as how we all handled it, and we definitely appreciate your time. Is it possible that we can either do this again or possibly get questions answered, in a different way in the future?
That most definitely. You can basically contact the inspector, David Fallon. David Fallon, DAVID Fallon, FALLEN. Excuse me. At Phila, PHILA.gov.
I'll put his email in the chat.
I put that you can call him directly if you have situations that need clarity, if you have situations that you need to talk to him about, or if it needs me to make a decision on, that he would make sure that I get it, inform me of all of it. What we want to do is make sure that people are safe. And if the situation comes out where they're not abiding by the law, we want to be able to assist that happens. You have a person that's been there where you are, trust me. If the laws change, we will follow the laws. So if you want laws to change, you got to talk to the legislators, because those are the ones that change those laws and come up with those policies and procedures, and that sometimes I look at as being somewhat troubling. But that would be up to y'all to basically petition our politicians to do what it is that they need to do for all of us. And so David Fallon can be your initial contact, and he will filter that down to everybody that's under him, our deputy sheriffs and our civilian personnel. Just note, we are beefing up that unit. It's now going to be called the Eviction Integrity Unit. And so as soon as the city gives me a budget that lets me hire, they already told me I can hire at least 20 more people just for that eviction unit, then they will focus just on that.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Carolyn Smith. I'm a former board member of Hapco. I have a squatter in one of my properties, and I know the suggestion was to have cameras at the property, but the squatter put up their own cameras surrounding my property. Where do I go from there?
I hear you.
They broke in. They weren't tenants.
They're not tenants?
No, never were.
How long they been in the property?
Maybe about 4 months.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're gonna have to start the eviction process, because I don't know how you can document somebody in the property for 4 months as a squatter that long without doing something.
Because they broke in. They broke a front window and they changed the locks.
So what I want you to do is, David Fallon, his information is in the chat. I think your organization has that. Send him that email so he can look into the situation to see what he can do, who you will need to go to next.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, this is her daughter. This isn't something that would be criminal trespassing, where we would be able to call the police and have them remove them from the property since they're in there unlawfully and they were never a tenant?
If they've been in there 4 months, son, that's
it may be difficult. Yeah, it may be difficult.
If you walked up there and they broke in their property 2 days ago, that's a situation you probably can call the police and basically document the fact that they wasn't there, but they done been there long enough to put up cameras. So now you have to go through the eviction process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But
email Fallon so that he can probably try to look at all the avenues in which that you can take to make sure you're taking the proper ways to do things to, get the people out of the property.
What this police district is it?
I believe it's the 35th. It's in West Oak Lane.
The zip code is 19138.
Right. So
35th.
You want to approach the police about that, and the city of Philadelphia passed something called the Criminal Defined Trespass Law back in 2018, and there's a set of police procedures that are attached to it. So you might want to talk to them about it. You can Google it, and I think Hapco has a copy of it.
And I'm sorry, what was the law called?
Defiant Criminal Trespass Law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to point out also, a lot of times landlords will not find out their property's been occupied to a significant amount of time, especially if they've got the property being mothballed until they can rehab it.
Yeah, it does happen. I'm one of them.
I had one years ago.
So, Brian, can I ask a last question?
Sure.
Sure.
We sent a batch of eviction cases, writ of possessions, as per the request of, I think, David Fallon. We mailed it to the office, and on October 11th, we called the office and confirmed the receipt of the cases, but hasn't processed yet. Is there anything that we can do in regard with that? Because of not processing it, the alias writ batch is on hold.
You mailed what to the office?
You mailed
Writ of possessions.
You mailed it to do the mail?
Yes.
That
on
is
October
not the way to
11th?
do that.
When we were in the office, they said they can do it. And as per the confirmation, the office staff mailed it. We got confirmation that I think it is the eviction real estate department, or I don't know exact department call. So we mailed it directly to them. They confirmed it, they received, but they haven't processed it yet. Is there anything we can do in regard with that?
Send that information to David Fallon. Okay. The list of whatever list that you sent him, so he can go back down to the main desk and find out why it hasn't been processed.
And what is the process supposed to be, or the preferred process?
The preferred process.
I think the sheriff department is supposed to process the writ of possession and send the notice to the tenants.
Right.
And then the batch with the alias writ needs to get processed. Since that has not been done, the alias writ is also pending.
No. What I'm saying is, it sounds like the sheriff is saying that sending them through the mail is not the ideal way. What are you suggesting then?
Oh, bring it in.
You basically have to bring it in because there's a payment that goes with it, isn't it?
Yes, we mailed the money order as well.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear you say it. I knew the answer to it. That's why I was.
So I'm just saying it's preferably. I understand the Senate City vibe. It'd be good that if you brought it in directly, but the mail, if they got it and they received it because they stamped it, send that information to David Fallon, and he would check on that process.
Yeah, sure, we'll do it. I think they suggested to mail it because in the batch we had like 10 or 12 cases, and they didn't want to do it at that time. You know, it takes a long time for us to process it, so they asked us to mail it.
Who asked you to mail it?
I don't know the person's name, but I can get it for you from my previous staff. Yep, thank you.
That the person that suggested that you mail it, make sure you get that information to David Fallon too.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time, Sheriff, and your team. We're going to end the Zoom now, and hopefully this was helpful for everybody, and we appreciate everyone's time.